But no sound. All right, test 1, 2. It's going
there
now.
We go. I see some bars here.
Okay.
Did somebody already say no sound?
Yeah, before we started. No sound because of the first one. What is up, everyone? Matt Parrino, nyupsyracuse.com, joined today by ESPN's Marcel Louis-Jacques. Hopefully we get a lot of people back in here. For some reason, whenever I go live for the first time on this thing, this happened to me 2 weeks ago, this microphone is not working. And when it does work, it's very good. So I'm trying to stick with it. But thank you for your patience, and hopefully we can get some more people back in here.
Hey, look, people forget that there's technical difficulties sometimes, man. You got to just roll with the punches, you know?
Exactly. And obviously we have this beautiful, wonderful snowfall behind you. I had like a little mock draft here that I put out last week, and I just kind of want to scroll through it. If you guys want to talk about it, give me a little cheat sheet, if you will, and we could talk about some players. Because obviously next week is the scouting combine. We were just talking about it. We get out to Indianapolis, enjoy some more wintry weather, because obviously you haven't had enough of it yet.
Man, it was more of a shock coming to Indianapolis from Charlotte last year than I think it's going to be from Buffalo. I think I'm a little more well prepared, got a couple more jackets, even got some boots. I think we got some midweek snow on the horizon here.
Don't tell me this, man.
But it's exciting because this is when really when the offseason starts. I think that it's kind of been a dead period from the end of the Super Bowl until really next Tuesday, where there's a lot of speculation. You know, people are getting a little stir crazy, but this is when we can finally start talking about prospects, and they're going to put performances like on the record and on tape and on paper for us to chat back and forth about. So this is it's an exciting time as a football fan. It's a great time as a reporter, because God knows, I don't know about you, I need something to do. I need somewhere to be, man. This is kind of going off the rails without the structure, without going over to One Bills Drive every day. But this is a really exciting time of year. I'm happy to start finally talking about the draft.
So I'm gonna reshare this link on Facebook, because we had a bunch of people in here that I think probably are wondering where that link went to.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody where you came back from and what got you that awesome sunburn?
Oh man, I'm just wearing it right now, man. That's went to Cabo, San Jose del Cabo for a week. Really the day after the Super Bowl. It was like as soon as football season's over, it's like I'm out the country, man. But fell asleep on a beach with sunglasses on. Apparently, it's been a week. If anyone can tell me like how tans work, I don't usually tan. This is different for me. This is really out of the ordinary, man. That's it got to the point where, you know, my girlfriend was the sweetest, nicest person in the world, even told me like, hey, maybe you wear eyeglasses. You know, maybe wear some glasses. It looks better with them on, like trying to, you know, spruce it up. It's like, all right, no, I appreciate that we can both recognize that this is a thing. Like my face looks different, but ultimately, I mean, it's hard to complain. A week on a beach, man. If this is what it costs, then this is what it costs.
It's funny because when I saw you today, we were at John Feliciano's filming a movie in Buffalo. He flew back from Florida, doing some rehab, doing some acting. We'll have a story about that later this week. But we both showed up at it today, and you walked in. He has sunglasses on, and he took the sunglasses off, and I'm like, "Wait a second, something's different here. Something's going on here."
Man.
And then I saw it, and it all clicked. I was like, "He got burnt."
Yeah, she keeps telling me actually go visit a tanning booth, and I might actually have to do that because I can't.
Oh, to fill in your eyes.
Yeah, I can't do that in Indy, man. Like it looks so goofy to me. Like I get, you know, I can say one thing. Oh well, you know, spend a week on the beach. It's a good time. No, like that looks goofy. So
well, it's a good time. Well, what's fun is Marcel Louis-Jacques from ESPN. This is a good time for this to happen. I love the wink, by the way, because you have no live heads right now. I mean, nobody is dying for ESPN, isn't dying for Buffalo Bills content.
Let's go ahead and knock on wood real quick. If not, you're going to see me on ESPN with, thick frame eyeglasses on. I might not even have lenses in them, just like something to block my eyes out.
Listen, I can think of worse things in the world than dealing with a little.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. This is a really first world problem. But it also doesn't help that there hasn't been like a lot of sun to just naturally fill it back in. So, you know, I thought about it. You know, I was going to just bundle up and just go sit, you know, in a park or something like that and just kind of face straight up, get the little, what is it called? The little tanning sheet that looks like the
little aluminum?
Yeah, yes, you know, that you like put in front of your car. Just like go ahead and just wear a couple rays.
We were just watching something with that today. I can't remember. Oh, it was on The Wire. which I got. We're not going to get into that right now.
No.
I had a little bit of a hot take. I got dunked on pretty hard, rightfully so, because I have to say, I did like season 1. We can't get into this now, but I did like season 1 in hindsight. I was so disappointed by the first 2 seasons. I overreacted, I think, and I got dunked on, and that's fine. I deserved it. Okay, Matt Parrino, Marcel Louis-Jacques. We cover the Buffalo Bills. 365 all year long. That's all we're thinking about are the Buffalo Bills and what they need to do this offseason as we move to a pretty important time here over the next month. We'll have free agency in a couple weeks. We'll have the draft in April. There's a lot of money to be spent, but it's interesting because we were talking a little bit about it before we started. Maybe not the big splashy moves that I think some fans are kind of hoping for. Give me some of your logic on that and why you don't think there's going to be maybe a big ticket item. And if you do have a question, put them in the comment section. I'm going to bring that up on my phone so I can follow along with that. But hit us with where your thinking is at that right now.
Yeah. So sometimes you got to take what coaches and general managers and players, you got to take what they say with a grain of salt every now and then, because they're not going to put all their cards on the table for you. But Brandon Beane, I think for the most part, you can take him at his word. And he came out and told us, don't expect the Bills to be this heavy hitter market setter in free agency. They do have approximately $84 million in cap space available this offseason. So I think fans are seeing that and saying, like, they're like the early 2010 Lakers fans. We gonna get everybody. Like, we're gonna sign him and him and him. It's just not gonna happen. That's not what it's like. I don't think guys like Yannick Ngakoue from Jacksonville is a popular name. Amari Cooper's been a popular name. AJ Green's been a popular name. But all 3 of those players are going to sign to, market setting type of deals. I was just told today, I heard somebody tell me today that they think Ngakoue is going to get 20 million, north of 20 million this offseason. And I don't see, with the guys that Buffalo's going to have to pay in the coming years, I just don't see them offering that kind of money to a guy that's not homegrown. I think a guy like Tre'Davious White, he's going to flirt with that $20 million a year range. And it's mostly because Jalen Ramsey down there in LA, he's setting a new market. I'm hearing that he wants somewhere around $18 million a year. If I'm Tre'Davious White, I'm thinking, I'm less of a headache than Jalen Ramsey. I'm just as good, if not better, than Jalen Ramsey. And I'm your guy. Like, I'm in the system. I'm a pillar in this community, a pillar for this team. I don't want anything less than that. So there's a lot of money, I think, that fans aren't thinking about that needs to go to some of these homegrown core players. And that window of having this massive, this massive amount of cap space is quickly shutting.
No, I think that I think that that's very logical. The one thing I'll add to it where I'm coming from, where I think there's maybe a glimmer of hope for those fans hoping for a big ticket item, is if one of these guys, whether at a position of need, especially in free agency, checks all the boxes. And what's interesting about what you say is it's tough to do that in free agency because you can't really dig into a guy the same way you can in the draft, where you talk to coaches and you talk to the player in all these different environments to kind of really tell you what kind of person and player you're going to get. In free agency, you kind of got to take the word of a lot of people that you're kind of hearing, having secondhand conversations with. So, but I think that there's a few needs in this team. I do agree with Brandon Beane that they're not one player away, and I think that precludes you from going all in on a big ticket item, even if you have the means, which, like you mentioned, they probably won't if they're planning to sign all of these guys back. Now, I think that there are some guys that we can maybe talk about. Jordan Poyer, as good as he's been and as important as he's been, I think that they're starting to fill the cupboards behind him, if you will. He started with Jaquan Johnson last year, who I think we both were pretty impressed with in his rookie season in the opportunities that he got. And they're going to continue to probably, with the draft picks that they have, supplement that.
Yeah, and this is something you and I talked about back in training camp, that, this guy, Jaquan Johnson, like, he could be a safety net. He could be a fail safe if Jordan Poyer gets too expensive. And I think Poyer is going to be that first major decision that this front office faces when it comes to, we want to take care of our guys. We want to keep our core together. We want to grow up the BAM. Poyer is going to be the first guy where you have to ask yourself, okay, is his age and skill set worth the money that he's probably going to command? Jordan Poyer is a free agent after next season, after the 2020 season. If I'm him, and I think what we can kind of surmise based on he and his camp's social media activity, I think he wants a new deal this offseason.
And by camp, you mean his wife?
I mean Rachel Bush.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not hard to read between the lines there. I think on several occasions, she's basically said, Buffalo, give us the bag. Like, he deserves it. And absolutely, man. He's signed for 12.5 over 4 or something ludicrous, and he's far outplayed that. He deserves his money, no doubt. But with all the mouths that are getting ready to be fed, all the mouths open in Buffalo right now, how much of a priority is Jordan Poyer going to be, just for the sake of continuity and taking care of your own? I mean, we ran down this list before, but just for viewers' sake right now, Deion Dawkins, left tackle. DJ Humphries just signed for 45 over 3 in Arizona. Deion Dawkins ain't getting a penny less than $15 million a year. That's how the market is. Matt Milano, I don't expect him to sign for anything less than 12.5 per year. Tre'Davious White, we're looking at anywhere between 17 to even 18, 19, or who knows, 20 with this new CBA, new TV deals coming in. The salary cap's just going to continue to explode. Micah Hyde is going to want a new deal more likely than not next offseason. And then there's Josh Allen. And you've got to, with the way these quarterbacks are getting paid nowadays, you've got to siphon off at least 30 to 35 million, if that's your guy, to pay him and keep him here long term. So there's a plan for this money. And once again, it all boils down to, like, this is just, it's not Madden. You know, you can't just, throw money at a bunch of guys at the biggest name that you see. And even in Madden, if y'all play Madden and start this franchise mode, even if you give those big guys money, then there's still 53-man roster below them that you've got to put together. So it's it's more art than science here, but there is a plan for this money.
First question we'll take is Jordan Phillips, and it's from John Patrick. Was the franchise tag Jordan Phillips news BS? And that's directed at you. Do you think that the franchise tag is in play?
I think it's BS. I don't think it's in play. Being, once again, boils down to, you can kind of take him at his word with a lot of things that he says. When he was specifically asked about Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips at his end of season, he went on about Shaq. We declined his option. We told him that we want you to have a great year so that we can bring you back long term. And when he moved on to Jordan Phillips, it was, he's earned the right to test his value on the market. And that more or less tells me that they presented him with a deal, and his counter was more than Buffalo was willing to pay. So I think they're going to let him test that figure out elsewhere. I don't think they're against bringing him back at the right price. And given their plan at defensive tackle, got Ed Oliver, that first round pick in there. They're high on Harrison Phillips as well. They've got a decent amount of money, even after the restructure, going to Star Lotulelei. Jordan Phillips, the right figure for him is probably around that $6 million a year range, given what this team's plans are. I don't think that's what he values himself as. I think he values himself as a top 3 defensive tackle in this league, and that's just not the kind of money he's going to get here in Buffalo.
And I think that if you're the Bills and you're talking about everything we were just talking about, even at $6-7 million, you're really cutting into what you want to do elsewhere. And what's the kind of mentality that a Jordan Phillips is going to have in that situation? He's going to be the backup to Ed Oliver. I would imagine that the snap count is going to separate a little bit in terms of who's getting more burn next year, just because you spent that capital on Ed Oliver. So I agree with you. I just don't think that it makes a ton of sense. And I think that you don't want a guy, as they really capitalized on his potential in these 2 years, and the fact that he never was a problem. He never caused a problem on the heels of that stint in Miami. But I think if you continue to put him in a situation where there's potential for that to happen, and I don't want to throw Jordan under the bus. I think everybody talked about how great he was in the locker room. I don't think that necessarily will be the case, but you're presenting that possibility because of the circumstances, I think.
Yeah, and I just, like I said, I don't think that I think he did well for himself this year. I think he's made a name for himself after the 2019 season. But this is a guy that, he was a second-round draft pick. So, people thought that he did have the potential to be a good starter in this league, if not great, but it's just not in Buffalo's current plan. I don't think it would make sense to pay him given what they just invested in Ed Oliver. And that's not to say you can't have multiple defensive tackles, but like you said, that there's only so many snaps in a game. There's only so many opportunities right there. And when you pay a guy, big time money, you are kind of under ownership's thumb to put that guy on the field. Like, don't give him this money for no reason. So I think Jordan's going to try to get his money elsewhere. He deserves that. He worked his butt off this year, played his butt off this year. It's just, I would be surprised if he returns to Buffalo for anything really over that $6-7 million a year mark. Now, Shaq Lawson, on the other hand, though, that's a guy I think that they want to bring around long term. That's a guy I don't think is going to command crazy money. He was a solid starter, a good starter, but he's not, he's not Clowney, he's not Ngakoue, he's not Frank Clark, he's not, one of these sack machine Bud Dupree. He's not that kind of edge rusher, but a guy, if this is his ceiling, a guy who can give you 6.5 sacks a year and play stout run defense, then yeah, that's worth the money. That's worth $7-8 a year for the next, we'll call it 4 years.
So one of the questions here, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go out of order just because this one caught my eye. Pierre Martinez asked, do you see any sleeper free agents that we can sign a la Poyer and Hyde? And I think that comes on the heels of us talking about don't expect big game fishing here. You know what I mean? But I think that there are some under the radar guys out there. We were talking about one depending on money, and I think he's going to probably be costly. I couldn't find his AAV on Spot Track before we started, or the market value prediction, but Joe Thuney from the New England Patriots. And you say offensive line, well, they took a step last year, but adding another top 10 positional player on the offensive line, I think bolsters that thing so much so that you start to see maybe a guy like Cody Ford elevate his level of play if you're able to elevate the level of play as a whole of that offensive line.
Yeah, I think it would be a brilliant move. I think he's been excellent for New England, during his time there. But with Cody Ford, that kind of brings up like a whole nother line of thought there, because you've got to make a decision if you're Buffalo. Is he a tackle or is he a guard? They've been kind of non-committal about it. Obviously, he did start 15 games at right tackle this year, but they're not outright saying, yes, this is our bookend. This is the guy that we want bookending our line with Deion Dawkins. I think that, it's a big decision this offseason if you want to move him inside or not. But whatever you choose this offseason, stick to it. Because, position flexibility is great, but you don't want to throw so many things at this kid his second year in the league, because, one of two things happens within your first 2 years in the NFL. Either you ball out as a rookie and the league figures you out, or the league eats you up as a rookie and you figure the league out. So, we'll see what happens with Cody in that year 2 range, but they've got a full season worth of film on his strengths, on his weaknesses. They'll know how to attack him. They'll know how to play him. And, if he's got to worry about that additional competition and where he's going to line up every week, then I don't think that's going to have a positive impact on him. So, whatever they choose to do, I think you got to make that decision and then, go into free agency accordingly. If you think you need another interior offensive lineman, if you want to keep him at tackle, then go that route. If you want to move inside, that's when you're going to go look for, you're going to go look and find another right tackle. But I think it starts with Cody Ford. And as far as, the under the radar free agents, guys like, Jordan Poyer was on really nobody's radar that offseason. That's a product of, just a good front office there. And so I think,
which is probably going to get a lot thinner over the next couple years here as other teams start to poach the talent. I mean, Dan Morgan was a real hot name this offseason, and who knows? I mean, we're not there yet. Something could change.
Yeah, I thought he'd be headed to Washington. I was fully expecting, I had the little stories pre-written and everything. I thought he was going with Ron Rivera in Washington, but he is a hot commodity now. Joe Schoen is going to be talked about as well. But I think, I would expect more of these free, under the radar free agent guys than the splashy ones, just because that's how they're going to have to spend their money here.
So I want to go back to Cody Ford for a moment because I think it's something that I'm kind of shifting on a little bit. I mean, I think that if you have the potential, my thought process was always if you have the potential to have an all-pro caliber guy at a position, you put him there and then build around that, right? But the more and more I think about it and the more I've talked to people, and today I had a really good conversation with John Feliciano about a bunch of different topics. But one of them was Cody Ford, and I asked him about that and where his mindset is at. They obviously made some buzz on social media. They had some chicken wings at Barbell. Our OG, it's still your go, right? Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Wow.
I don't know, man. That honey, the Cajun honey butter barbecue is right up there with the hot honey mustard at Macy's.
Okay.
I'll give that.
Okay.
But man, I don't know. 9/11 really blew me away.
This is breaking news here
Really
because
blew me away,
when you
man.
first got here, I mean, we went to Barbell once together. You went a couple times. You had it.
It was
up there.
It was up there. Then I became a Buffalonian. I spread my wings a little bit. Yeah, I'm still probably going to Macy's before I go anywhere.
Okay.
Just because the fact I can pick it up and take it home. They cut the little hole in the styrofoam so they're still crispy and I can eat from my couch. That's elite. I love that.
Okay.
9/11, the most consistent like original flavor wings that I think are in the city. Like period. But
those look pretty fire, the ones you were having. I didn't have a great experience at 9/11, but I think it was kind of similar to Gabriel's Gate. So I think maybe I'll go back and give it another whirl and see if maybe. And I don't think I had hot. I think I had medium, which I think I want to go up to that hot level.
I think we had hot.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure we had hot. It didn't kill me over. I'm not begging for a glass of milk. Like they're fine. Like
right.
Very few places in town I think say hot and like really mean hot. I think it's a little soft out here, but maybe one day I'll run into a hot wing that's like, oh shoot, man, this is actually kind of temperature's up a little bit here.
Well, John Feliciano said that the suicide at Barbell was pretty intense. So, and he was eating with Cody Ford, and I asked him about Cody Ford's rookie year because Feliciano kind of took a leadership role in that room, and I think Mitch Morse did as well. But John Feliciano, they've been in the league the same amount of years. He's got a familiarity with Bobby Johnson. I think it was just a natural progression. And also, he plays next to Cody, so it's easy for them to share ideas. And I asked him, like, what's your take on it? And he said, listen, the guy came in here and did everything that you asked him to do in year one. In year two, he's going to be even better. He's seen things in the NFL that he hadn't seen before. And I remember a conversation I had with Cody back in season where he said that the entire system and how they were asking him, technically speaking, to line up and approach his position is completely different than what he was doing at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, you look at who was playing quarterback for him at Oklahoma. You got Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. Kyler's known for his scrambling ability, but make no mistake, those are two guys that will step up in the pocket and they can stay put and deliver a pass when need be. Josh Allen, that's not his MO. He's not a pocket passer. This is a guy who, more or less, and this isn't, I'm not trying to make this a knock against him, but, first sign of trouble, he's probably getting out of there. And that's his skill set. That's what makes him special, his ability to extend plays outside of the pocket, throw on the run and whatnot. So it just takes a little bit of getting used to, I think, from Cody's perspective. But like John said, I mean, he does everything you ask him to. You're either going to go one or two ways in your second year. You're going to get worse, you're going to get better. So, we'll see. He's coming back from shoulder surgery. We'll see if he's ready for OTAs. From what I'm told, they expect him to be at least limited, probably to start, but it's not going to be a problem come training camp. And that's when we're really going to see Cody's development.
The next question is about the AFC East teams. Do you see how many do you see making the playoffs next year, given the division's difficult schedule? So we'll start there, and I'd also like to transition a little bit to CBA talks from today, the news from today.
Yeah, I was about to say if it's I don't think the 7-team. No, I think the 7-team playoff they're trying to start that next season. Yeah. So I think even with 7 teams, it depends where Tom Brady goes, but I would still expect only one AFC East team to make it. Okay. I think it's right now, if there's no Tom Brady, I think it's Buffalo. If Brady returns, then, it's kind of a toss-up. There's still a lot of work that the Patriots need to do on the offensive side of the ball. But that's another great front office that should probably, they'll probably be able to figure it out. But I think Miami, especially with the schedule they're going to be facing and the new faces and the young players at critical positions they'll be rolling out, Miami's not a factor. The Jets always find a way to shoot themselves in the foot. So
Bills fans love hearing that.
I mean, like, the Jets are the Jets, man. Yeah. They've been the Jets for a while. Like, this is just
if you didn't hear, Odell Beckham Jr. said that that's his landing spot of choice, I guess.
That man wants to go back to New York, man. Like, that's just, he doesn't care about the Jets. That man just wants to be in New York. He's like, all right, man, Cleveland is not lit. So let me go back. Let me go back to the city. Let me go get my shine again. But I'm not going back to the Giants. Even with Odell with the Jets, Adam Gase is a dumpster fire waiting to happen. He will do something to screw that team up somehow. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. That's what I've seen from him. And until he proves otherwise, that's the stance I'm going to keep. Especially, I mean, they're talking about Le'Veon Bell as a possible trade asset this summer. Robbie Anderson may or may not be back. And if he's not, then they better hope they somehow trade for Odell, because there's no one for Darnold to throw the ball to. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I don't see the Jets being a threat. But I think Buffalo's got a shot. I think defense will take you further than an elite offense will. I think let me put it this way. If you have an elite offense, but your defense is complete garbage, I don't think you're winning as many games as having an elite offense with a below average, or an elite defense and below average offense. And that's kind of what got the Bills to the playoffs last year. I would expect that's kind of what they roll out in 2020 as well. We'll see what they do with these, with this money and these draft picks. Obviously, they need playmakers. They're going to need some kind of spark on that side of the ball. But it's so early to really play this game. Like, the dynamic of the league could completely change, man. Right. I mean, this time last year,
in the next week.
Yeah, I don't think Odell was a Cleveland Brown this time last year.
Right.
Who would have thought who would have even painted the Browns as a threat? Mm-hmm. Obviously, they were not, but they were everybody's Super Bowl champion as soon as that trade happened. So, like, there are splashy moves that are going to shift the narrative and shift the opinion. That's just what the offseason's about. So, why don't we revisit this playoff conversation in let's call it May?
Yes.
May, June.
I like that idea. If you haven't heard yet, the NFL Players Association and the owners have been negotiating terms on a new collective bargaining agreement. And today it was announced that the owners agreed to, or voted, and it passed with the owners. So the terms of it are basically the two big ones I want to talk about. 7 playoff teams, which would add an additional wild card game in the NFC and AFC, and an additional regular season game. And it got me thinking, because about halfway through the season, I think it was Sal Capaccio from WGR 550 asked Lorenzo, who was with the Players Association last year, what his thoughts were. And I'll read the quote. We can talk about it a little bit. He was asked about the 17-game schedule, the proposed. And he said, I know what they want. They want to play 18 too. Obviously, from our perspective, it's about player safety. Adding another game doesn't equate to player safety at all. It's hard enough to play now, including the Thursday night game that we have to endure as well. There's a lot of things that we'll probably have to transpire, starting with healthcare and advancing that from the 5 years you currently get after you finish playing the game. You start adding games to people's bodies, then careers are going to get even shorter than what it is right now. You put guys more at risk of incurring an injury because we have a 100% injury rate in the NFL. There would have to be something on the back end that makes sense to where medically that we're covered no matter what happens, no matter what the cost, just like every other American that could end up bankrupting you when you're done playing this game. And listen, man, I think that part of it is something that you don't think about as a fan first and foremost, but when you start digging into this, the game is, it's tough to keep a roster healthy for 16 games. I mean, just imagine what you're going to run into in 17 games. And I know one of the caveats was everybody would get a game off, I guess. It would be something in terms of the negotiation. But I think adding these games it's going to change the dynamic of things. And not only from a player safety perspective, but historically speaking, what does that change? What does that do to records now that, like, all these guys are going to have 17 games? We don't ever really think about that. And it's not really the be all end all of the conversation, but it's something.
Yeah, I was talking to let's call them a league source today about that, the proposition that in a 17-game season, you're not allowed to play any more than 16 games. And he said to me, okay, well, let's say Bills are 1 game out in week 17, but Josh has already played 16 games. You can sit Josh Allen and start Matt Barkley. Or Drew Brees, if the Saints, if the Saints need a game, but he's already played 16. So Drew Brees can't play. Patrick Mahomes can't play if the Chiefs are, that's when it starts to get a little foggy. And, it's good in theory. It's great in theory, but I don't think that the owners are overly concerned about player health. If they were, the 17-game season wouldn't be a thing. And this is about maximizing as much money as possible. And wild card weekend, I think, inspired them a little bit to just let's keep the drama going. A lot of games went down to the wire. A lot of races went down to the wire last year, and they want to capitalize on that. But I mean, he hit the nail on the head. That's dangerous. We're putting players' health in jeopardy now, because in theory, I mean, if you're a wild card team and you already play 17 games, then right away you got to play in that wild card round. And if you win that, then you got to go to the divisional round, then you got to go to the conference, and then the Super Bowl. Like, that's a lot of football.
And we saw guys in season have to be held out of practice consistently. The Lorenzo Alexanders, the Jerry Hughes, the Lee Smiths of the world. That just imagine how much more careful coaches are going to have to be with their older players if that happens.
Like I was talking to Cole Beasley about what 1 to 10 his average level of pain is during the week, and pretty quickly he was like probably like a 7 or an 8. I was like, that's like crazy. Really high. If 10 is like you can't get out of bed, 7 or 8 is really freaking high. And you got to do that 16 times. Now they're asking you, okay, actually do it again. And if you make the playoffs, then maybe 4 or 5 more times. So I just think it's a little, I don't know. It's kind of unreasonable. I'm looking forward to reading all the details of the CBA just to see, like, okay, if they're giving this, if the players are giving this, what are they getting in return? I think they absolutely deserve a bigger market share. Or a bigger percentage of revenue. Lifetime healthcare, I think, is an absolute must if they don't have it already. I think you start there, because like you said, you can bankrupt yourself with these medical bills afterwards if you're not insured or if you are not taken care of. But and also, what is this going to do? What is this going to do to active rosters? I think you got to be able to expand on that 53-man roster. You've got to be able to expand your game day active roster as well. If you're going to ask these guys, if you're going to ask so much of these guys. So there's a lot of little things I think that need to be ironed out. But obviously, I'm not surprised that the owners, approved it. They came up with it.
Right. So if you're just joining us, thank you so much. We're on the NY Up YouTube page, joined tonight by Marcel Louis-Jacques from ESPN. I am Matt Parrino. We're taking your questions, and we got a bunch filling up in here, so we'll try to get to as many as we can. Do you think 17 we'll skip that for now. Go back to a free agent question. What are your thoughts on signing James Bradberry? And if not, what is the likelihood we go after Josh Norman? Go ahead.
Bradberry?
0%.
You see that? I'm trying to, make the 0, hard 0%. Look, Bradberry is a great player. And I think that since the average football fan probably doesn't know who James Bradberry is, they kind of are assuming that, he'll be able to sign for a bargain. That's not the case. This man has spent 3 years guarding Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, and Julio Jones in shadow coverage for the Panthers. And he's done a damn good job of it. I think with corners, guys like Xavier Howard a couple years ago, who knew who he was before he signed a 5-year, $75 million contract?
Right.
Very few people, because the good corners, the best corners, do their job silently. Like, you don't hear about them. It's like offensive linemen. Like, the best linemen, you don't want to hear about, because if you do, that's usually they're penalized or they're getting roasted,
right,
or they're just running their mouth. Bradberry is a guy, he doesn't run his mouth, but he goes in there and he balls out. This guy's going to get, top cornerback money, and you just can't pay him and Tre'Davious White that top kind of money. Then you're looking at north of $30 million. I think I said that they would, if they did that, it would be looking at $25 million plus going to their just top 2 cornerbacks. That was super conservative.
Right.
It's probably north of 30. And, Bradberry's a good guy. I'm not trying to, dunk on the question at all. Like, my bad if I came hard, but
you've been hearing that, and you got to put it in perspective, because expectations get high and you see names all the time. I wrote a piece one Monday morning on Amari Cooper, because I just saw it on so many different platforms. It's like, listen, I hate to burst bubbles, but the Bills are not going to go out, break the bank for Amari Cooper, even if he's available. It's not a likely scenario. And I think that's where you're coming from.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just not even not likely. It's just not going to happen. If it does, I will get on my Instagram account and apologize to whoever it is that asked that question. But it's not going to happen. I've got it on, I've got a pretty good idea what Bradbury is going to ask for, given who I've been able to speak with in the league. And I think that I just don't think it's realistic in any way, shape, or form. Josh Norman, on the other hand, he did have his best year under Sean McDermott.
Years, right? A couple of years, he was pretty good with him, right?
We'll call it year.
Okay.
We'll call it a year. I think he had 2015. He had his All-Pro season, and he signed a mega deal. And this also just kind of shows you the state of the market for cornerbacks. Josh Norman signed for $75 million, I think, over 5 years,
right,
in 2016,
right,
and he's still like the second highest paid corner in the league,
right.
Like with every other position, I feel like the market just climbs. There's been nobody until Xavier Howard hit it a couple years ago, but either way, I think he's more realistic at the right price. Obviously, he's not going to fetch. I don't think he's going to fetch a lot. I don't think he was as awful as the reputation he got in Washington, but I don't think he's an elite cornerback. He is crafty. He's a veteran. He knows Sean McDermott's system. He's a pro. I think he can come in, and I think he can succeed in the right environment. And this looks like the right environment for him. Like, it just kind of depends on how he views himself or what kind of market he attracts. I just don't think he's getting crazy money, but I think it's an option. At least Levi Wallace is an exclusive free agent. He'll probably be back. Kevin Johnson, I would expect, is coming back. We'll see what the market looks like for him as well. But if you can get Josh Norman, I would argue that I'd rather have Josh Norman than Kevin Johnson, as good as Kevin Johnson was, because I mean, you got to start saving money. I think I would pay Kevin Johnson more than Josh Norman at this point. I think he's just got more upside. It's just a smarter investment.
I think it comes down to money. And I also think it comes down to your pro scouts and really digging into the Washington tape and figuring out how far Josh Norman has fell over the last couple of years. You look last season, he gave up 7 touchdowns. Obviously, they're not going to be asking him to stand out on an island and guard number 1 wide receivers in this defense. Tre'Davious White does that when they play man, and for the most part, they play zone. So I think that could be a situation where I did write that I don't think Josh Norman should be a guy that you go out there and spend a lot of money on, but under the right circumstances. Listen, Levi Wallace, I thought was fine last year. And I thought that I think there's a chance that he improves over the course of the offseason and becomes even better. But I think what this regime has proven is that what their goal is to put enough people in place at every position to create and kind of cultivate competition. And then whoever the best player is, they'll be available. Look what happened to Levi Wallace down the stretch. I mean, the guy starts 16 games, goes down in the finale, and then, oh, by the way, you got to go to your bench for the playoff game. And luckily they had Kevin Johnson. Not much else. I think that's a position definitely, whether it be in the draft or free agency, the Bills have to address.
Yeah, I think I see a comment right now that Wallace is adequate. I think, yeah, he's a starting caliber corner.
That's good eyes, man.
Yeah, he's not a guy that's going to be. It's a contacts, man. He's not a guy that you're going to ask to shadow the DeAndre Hopkinses of the world or the Odell Beckhams of the world. But he's a guy who more or less held his own when he was picked on, with the exception of, I think, that Cleveland game is what sticks out in people's minds. And that goes back to what I was saying in regards to James Bradbury, that, corners, when you've heard of a corner, it's not often good. Like, when you hear a corner's name, it's usually not great. They're either getting a pick or they're getting picked on. I think Levi got picked on and it's stuck in people's head. But no, I think Josh Norman would make he's more likely than James Bradbury. And I also just want to be clear, because I think I got misquoted by a few of these, the social media outlets and whatnot. Got misquoted as saying the Bills were a front runner or something like that for Josh Norman. No, I think he's a name to watch. I'm not saying I've got it on any authority that Buffalo is going after him. It just does it fits their MO. I mean, Brandon and Sean, they go after guys they know. And I think that's the norm throughout the league.
So If you have any more questions, hit them up in here. I kind of try to scan. It's tough when we're doing these live chats that really dive into these questions because there's a lot of comments in here. But if you have any more questions, fire them off here before we get out. But I did want to cover one thing before we go because I did put out that mock draft last week, and it was the first exercise that I like to do the exercise. And I will say I'm not a mock draft expert or draft expert, but I think it's important to study the mock draft, study the class, and then kind of go through the exercise. And so that's what I did. And I kind of took it from everything I kind of like a conglomeration of everything that I saw and try to make the best pick at each pick. Right. And we talked early on in the chat about Yannick Ngakoue and Jadeveon Clowney, some of these big edge rushers out there that the Bills just, if we're being honest with ourselves, just can't afford. So at 22, if we're talking about Gross Matos from Penn State, Chasen from LSU, some of the top edge rushers in this class, what are your thoughts on going after one of those really athletic guys that then gives you options if you bring back a Shaq Lawson to maybe move on from a Trent Murphy and add $8 million so you can add somewhere else? That's another thing we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
There's money to be saved if you want to go after one of these big targets too.
Yeah, I think Trent Murphy, I'm glad you brought that up. Trent Murphy is either restructure or cut. I think at this point you save like $8 million, like you said. It's just he's not been productive enough to be. He's the Bills' second highest paid player right now.
$10 million next year. That's a lot of money.
I think he finished with 4.5 sacks, and 2 of them were against the Jets in week 17.
And it was 5, and it was 3 in week against the Jets, wasn't it? Because he needed 3 to, or maybe 1 and 2.
It was a lot in week 17.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
But yeah, I think this. You need a receiver. Bills, they need a receiver this year. There's no doubt about it. It's an incredible wide receiver class, and you're gonna have that that urge to grab one in the first round. But I think if a guy like Chazon is there, if Gross Matos is there, if AJ Epinesa is there, that you probably just snag him up at 22 because it's easier to get your DN and then still find receiver depth in the second round than it will be vice versa. And I think that's going to be it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for Bills fans. If you see a guy like T. Higgins or Laviska Shenault there at 22 and they pass on him, they're going to be pocket watching, I think, the entire next season. They're going to be stat watching the entire next season saying, look at what T did, look at what Shenault did. But edge rusher right now is the right move because it's just it's a rapidly degrading. What am I saying? Rapidly regressing position. Jerry Hughes is not going to be around forever. He's been great, but he's into his 30s already. Trent Murphy, like I said, he's restructured or he's gone. I think. Beyond that, Daryl Johnson didn't really have enough or get enough play on the defensive side of the ball in his first year. But he's crazy athletic, and we'll see if he pans out or not. But there's not a concrete plan at that position moving forward.
I think it's interesting that at 22, you have a chance to have an answer at multiple positions. But what could really throw this thing on its head is if at 22, and I know last year Ed Oliver was a slam dunk, run to the podium, no surprises. But as you move through the draft, there were a couple head scratchers at the time that I think – in hindsight, really played out pretty well. I think, and I'm talking about the third round picks in Singletary and Knox. I put out a question earlier this week and I said, I would be surprised. And maybe I don't necessarily think it's a great play to go running back in the first 4 rounds, but some of the responses I saw from that really made me kind of thinking, I kind of get that if you want to add another weapon in the run game, it's not the worst idea if you're getting the value in those first 4 rounds.
Look, I'm just going to say a name. I've been saying it for like literally 3 years. You can check my Twitter account. A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. The kid is 6'4", about 240 pounds. I've talked to Tommy Sweeney about him a couple of times. The BC more or less ran him into the dirt. But this is a guy, you need 3 yards, you need 4 yards. You give it to whatever the hell number he's going to choose. You give it to him and you will get out of his way. This is a guy, he's not getting stuffed 4 times at the goal line. This is a guy I think who can complement Devin Singletary, who did prove to be a better between the tackles runner than I think everybody expected in his rookie year. But ultimately, that's a guy that you want to get in space. And the great thing about A.J. Dillon is you should probably be able to get him in that 5th round, 6th round range. I don't know why. He might go out there and run like a 4.7 and people are going to get, scared off. But this guy is just a bruiser. I watched him run in college. He's just, if he played for Georgia or Florida or, one of these blue chip schools, then he'd be getting all the hype in the world. But he played for Boston College, so he's going under the radar.
Well, the Bills could go back to the well. I mean, Matt Milano, Tommy Sweeney, they're doing pretty good at Boston College.
Exactly. Why not, man? If it ain't broke.
So let me go through here. Number one wideout will not help if decision-making by Josh Allen does not get better in scanning the field. Do we close this out with some fire Josh Allen discussion?
Yeah, I think a top receiver is going to make a difference, because if you got a guy that you trust, that you can get that ball to and who can make just magic happen, then I think, you're such a process a little quicker. You start to look that way a little quicker. Mm-hmm. But right now, I just don't think he had the weapons in place. And I don't want to get into a spot where we're making excuses for Josh Allen. He did leave some plays on the field, but things are happening, awfully fast down there, and pockets collapsed on him awfully fast. And like we said earlier in the conversation, his go-to is to get out, mm-hmm. Sign of danger. Let me go. Let me extend. Let me make more happen. But I just, you're right. Look, Josh Allen does need to improve. He needs to progress. But I think the best aspect of Josh Allen's game is it's more mental than anything he does on the field. It's his willingness to improve and accept the areas in which he needs to improve. We hear it week in and week out. I need to do X better. I need to do Y better. I need to do Z. And then he goes out and does X, Y, and Z better. It's not all chat. It's not all grammar for him. So I think, given his leap from year 1 to year 2, you give him the benefit of the doubt here. But, if he can play to the level that we were seeing in like the fourth quarter of games and in clutch situations, except for Houston, then I think you're looking at a dangerous quarterback, possibly a top 12 guy, mm-hmm. sooner rather than later.
So nobody's asking me to die on this hill, but I'm willing to. In that I think that after 2 rewatches and all 22, I think Josh Allen played way better in that Houston game than most people give him credit for. Now, if you look at the positions that may have let them down a little bit, I think that there are some draft options, we've already talked about them, that are immediate upgrades in this offense. You look at Duke Williams, who got 10 targets, only 4 catches, a guy that, unfortunately for him, and I think a little bit unfair to him, he was put in a situation after not playing for most of the season that I just think it was a little bit unfair. But I almost think in that spot, T. Higgins is an absolute crazy upgrade if you're able to get him at 22. Isaiah McKenzie, who's been really, really good, he's been fine. I think almost Laviska Shenault in that role, that kind of Swiss Army knife that you could kind of put around anywhere in the offense. I think now you're talking either of those guys takes his offense to the next level.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like Hermione Granger here. It's Laviska, not Laviska, but that's my guy at 22, man. If he and T. Higgins are both there, Laviska is a guy who, given what he's been able to do and his skill set, that the guy who you hit him on a 10-yard slant and he can house it. You wouldn't expect him to be as big as he is, but he's still going to come in at like 6'2", about 200, 205, 210. This is a big guy, and he was used in such a variety of ways that he can immediately plug into Brian Daboll's offense and do what he likes to do with his wide receivers. He can hit those jet sweeps. He can pass that ball on a wide receiver on a trick play. Mm-hmm. He can line up in the wildcat. Even this guy just does a little bit of everything. And I covered T. Higgins for a season and a half. I'm a big T. Higgins fan. I think he's going to have a great NFL career. I don't really see it as much as I do Shenault in Buffalo. I think it would almost feel like I think he's going to be better than Kelvin Benjamin, but it would almost feel like what the Panthers did with Cam Newton and just getting a guy with a wide, catch radius and saying like, here,
just to do it.
You can't miss him. Like right. Throw the ball anywhere and he'll go get it. I think T will go get it, but I just don't think he is that right fit like Shenault is. And I can't say it enough that if if Laviska is drafted and they end up with T. Higgins, Bills fans should be ecstatic. Don't go pulling receipts. Don't go snitch tagging that I said he wasn't going to be good.
Snitch tagging.
I think end it, but I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be great. I just little things. He needs to put on. He needs to put on a little bit more. He's about 6'4". I want to say 205.
Okay.
But it looks a little wiry. And out here, I mean, this is a different kind of cold, man. It's a different kind of cold. This is a Tennessee kid.
What's your
Clemson.
What's your Instagram?
At MLOUISJA.
Okay.
M. Louis-Jacques.
You could search his name too, and you'll come across it. And I definitely recommend following it, only because for his winter Wonderland adventures, when it's really snowing, you will see him. You walk in Morty.
Walk Morty. Yeah.
Yep. And from the stadium, we won't get as much as that probably around free agency. But the one day you were actually crying, but it wasn't even that you were crying; it was tears from the cold.
Yeah, like the wind made me do it. Like it went into my face and brought the tears out of my eyes. Like I didn't want to cry. It was just, it is what it is. I got my mom and everybody telling me, zip up your jacket, put your glasses on. It ain't gonna matter.
You don't understand.
It does not. Yeah, you do not understand. Like Lake Effect was not a game. But yeah, I think there are guys. There are guys in that first round range. Specifically Shenault and Higgins, who come in and make an immediate impact. Or you go DN. And you get my boy Brandon Aiyuk in the second round.
Arizona State,
man. Let's go Devils. And I might be, this might be a homer take here, but this is a guy who I think a lot of the country is fast asleep on because he plays all his games at 11 o'clock Eastern and nobody's seen him play.
Right.
But if you go back and you watch, a quick highlights of ASU's game against Oregon this year, he torched that Oregon defense. This is a guy, he's another – turns a slant or a post route into a highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
He turns it into 6 points. And that's really just what they need right now. It's so easy to just say they need a home run hitter, but my God, they need a home run hitter.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what they're using John Brown as. That's not what they're using him for. He's a good vertical threat, don't get me wrong, but John Brown is a complete route runner. He's a complete receiver, and that's how he's being used in Buffalo. They need a guy who's about to turn, 5 yards into 6 points. And right now, Shenault, Aiyuk, those are guys that I'm looking at.
I tell Bills fans all the time, if you want to find like media members that are really plugged in, go find some of these men and women that actually did the job. I think that Daniel Jeremiah with NFL Network was a scout. I kind of take his takes on these kind of things pretty seriously. Last year, he had Josh Jacobs as his number 5 overall prospect. I think in hindsight, that looks pretty good after how good he was. He's got Aiyuk at 19 overall, his 19th best prospect. I have him in the second round. If he falls, I don't think that he will. He'll probably test really well next week. But if the Bills got him in the second round, I mean, tell me what that grade is from you if the Bills get him at 54.
That's an A+. You jump for joy. I don't know what you get in round one. I don't know what they went round one. I assume if they go Aiyuk, that means they went receiver. But Brandon Beane strikes me as a BPA kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a home run. I think he's an absolute home run. We'll see. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to prove that he's gotten over, I think it was an ankle injury from the Senior Bowl. I know a lot of people that were disappointed they weren't able to see him participate and see him play, but he's going to test through the roof, I think, at the combine, and then it's on from there.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was so much fun. We went over 50 minutes here. I'm so appreciative of you coming over and taking a part in this. We're going to be doing a lot of podcast style video, live chats, and the vision is going to be even bigger as we move along. Definitely, if this is your first time here, subscribe to the NY Up YouTube page. We'll have content all throughout the offseason. We're going to be in Indianapolis getting snowed on next week at the scouting combine. So make sure you bring that jacket you got the one with the little feathers on the hood?
Oh, no, man, that ain't me. I'd rather freeze.
You did? I thought you had it in one of the videos.
With the fur around?
Did you have like the rim with the fur on the hood?
No, not me. No, sir.
Because to be honest with you, I thought that was a little soft, and you were just talking about the softness with the chicken wings. I was gonna say, if you got the hood with the feathers, it's a little soft.
I'd rather freeze, and it's part of the reason why I still look like a reverse raccoon because my girlfriend told me maybe take the sunglasses off on the last day and just kind of let it even out. So I tried, and I was just squinting, and I was like, you know what? I'd rather burn than squint, and here we are. But I'd rather freeze than wear a furry hood jacket. So, I'll have one with just a little collar, a little swishy down material. Ain't gonna have no fur on it, but that is not your boy.
Well, what's cool is when we get back from Indianapolis, we can kind of hibernate for a couple months and then come back out in like May when the sun comes out. It's been a pretty mild winter. We can't really complain. But thank you so much again for joining us. You can find all of his work at ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter I always forget the handle.
At Marcel_LJ.
There you go. I'm at Matt Parrino, nyupsyracuse.com. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And we'll see you next week from Indianapolis. Follow our coverage. It's kind of awkward, like
having that
stand up
and
and the